Welcome back to Pandora, a world that James Cameron has built into a cultural and cinematic ecosystem of its own, and a world that has grown so heavy with lore, mythology, ecological spectacle, and philosophical tension that every new trailer feels less like a teaser for a blockbuster and more like an academic thesis masquerading as a fantasy adventure. And the new full-length trailer for Avatar: Fire and Ash does not simply pick up where The Way of Water left off, but explodes into a new direction that is at once theological, ecological, existential, and deeply political, because what begins with the visual grandeur of bioluminescent forests, towering trees, ocean waves, and the familiar silhouettes of giant blue Na'vi warriors quickly spirals into something that forces viewers to question the very structure of belief, the nature of godhood, and the consequences of human colonial arrogance as it crashes into a planet that was already barely surviving. So let's start with the character at the heart of the tension this time, Oona Chaplin's Varang, the leader of the Ash clan, a group of Na'vi who look almost scorched by fire, their skin and markings darker, their presence harder, their aesthetic evoking Cirque du Soleil performers singed too close to the volcanic flame, and their entire culture seemingly defined by survival in the shadow of volcanic catastrophe, which gives Varang the fuel of grief and rage, because in the trailer it is made clear that her entire extended family, her village, her people, were devastated by a volcanic eruption that wiped out everything she knew, and in that moment of overwhelming destruction, she turned to Eywa, the godlike planetary consciousness, the neural network of Pandora that connects every root, every creature, every thought, and that in the past has shown it can summon enormous forces of nature to protect the planet. And she expected salvation. She expected intervention. She expected the comfort of a divine protector who would not let innocence burn, but what she received was silence, inaction, abandonment. And that sense of betrayal is what lights her fury, because what do you do when the god of your planet, a god that you can literally touch through your queue, a god you can feel in the pulse of the forest, a god whose existence is proven and visible and undeniable, simply chooses not to help? And this is where James Cameron takes us into one of the strangest theological wrinkles in modern science fiction, because unlike Earth religions where gods are ineffable, unseen, and require faith, Eywa is tangible, present, verifiable, and yet her limitations or choices lead to doubt and rage, and that paradox is brutal because when belief does not rely on faith but on direct experience, when you can literally plug your neural braid into a creature or tree and commune with the living God of your world, how do you justify the failures? How do you excuse the tragedies? How do you reconcile omnipotence with apathy? And so Varang responds the only way she knows. She becomes cynical, furious, convinced that Eywa is not worthy of worship, that Eywa abandoned her, that Eywa's silence proves either weakness or cruelty, and that anger pushes her toward vengeance. And in her quest for vengeance, she turns to the one alliance guaranteed to horrify every Na'vi loyalist. She aligns herself with Colonel Quaritch, the resurrected human villain, and his army of colonizers, because nothing screams blasphemy louder than siding with the very forces bent on stripping Pandora of its resources, remaking it in their own image, and choking the Na'vi out of existence. But Varang's decision, however horrifying, is not irrational, because grief makes allies of enemies, and rage makes strange bedfellows, and she is not simply a villain, but a character carved out of trauma and disappointment. So she becomes the vessel through which this story asks one of its biggest questions: what happens when the God of your world fails you in public, in a way that cannot be ignored, when the divine hotline is proven to be nothing more than static, when salvation never arrives, when your connection to the sacred tree does not stop the flames? Do you stop believing? Do you rebel? Do you reject the entire framework of faith? Or do you lash out against those who still cling to it? And this is the existential crisis at the heart of Fire and Ash. But that is only half the trailer, because woven into this spiritual and cultural chaos is the ongoing human agenda, the colonial nightmare that has defined the Avatar saga since the first film. And here it takes on a terrifying new dimension, because it is no longer only about mining unobtainium or raiding oceans for resources. It is now about the air itself, the atmosphere, the biosphere, the most fundamental building block of survival, and we are given glimpses that suggest the humans are terraforming Pandora, bending its natural balance to their will. And the evidence comes through Spider, the human boy raised among the Na'vi, the son of Quaritch, the adopted brother of the Sully family, who in the trailer removes his mask and breathes Pandora's air without difficulty, an act that in any other film would be triumphant, but here feels ominous, because we have been told repeatedly that Pandora's atmosphere is unbreathable for humans, a toxic soup of nitrogen, carbon dioxide, xenon, methane, and other gases that suffocate unprotected lungs. So the fact that Spider inhales with ease suggests that either the planet is changing or the humans are changing themselves. And Jake Sully's grim words in the trailer confirm the stakes, that maybe the Na'vi themselves will one day lose the ability to breathe their own atmosphere, that the biosphere itself may be weaponized against them. And that idea is horrifying because it suggests the humans are not merely occupying the land, but reprogramming the entire environment to suit themselves, turning Pandora into a colony at the most molecular level, a complete ecological takeover. And that is colonialism with the volume turned beyond maximum, because it is no longer just about resource theft, it is about stealing the very right to exist, suffocating the original inhabitants by remaking the planet so that only the colonizers can thrive. But yet there is another wrinkle, because Spider is also shown plugging into a Pandoran sea creature like a Na'vi, which implies the possibility that the humans are altering themselves, genetically reshaping their biology, becoming hybrids capable of surviving in Pandora's environment. And if that is the case, then the horror takes on a different shape, because it is one thing to destroy the land and remake it in your image, it is another to erase the boundaries between colonizer and colonized by rewriting your DNA, infiltrating the spiritual and biological heart of Pandora and becoming what you seek to dominate. Which makes the humans not only invaders, but imposters. And the question then becomes, which is worse, a planet reshaped to suffocate its natives, or a colonizer who rewrites their body to masquerade as the native? And both possibilities are chilling. Both are violations of nature. Both are acts of violence on a planetary scale. And this is where Fire and Ash expands the Avatar story beyond spectacle into allegory, because Cameron is not just making a movie about blue aliens fighting soldiers, he is dissecting colonialism, religion, ecology, and human arrogance with the precision of a scalpel. But he does it with the volume of an orchestra blasting at full force, because nothing in this saga is subtle. Everything is massive, maximalist, overwhelming, and the trailer proves it, because in a span of a few minutes, we get theology, biology, colonial politics, interspecies betrayal, and ecological apocalypse, all wrapped in dazzling visuals of floating mountains, glowing trees, and lava-lit landscapes. And if this is only the trailer, then the full movie, rumored to run even longer than The Way of Water's 3 hours and 12 minutes, will be a climb of endurance, an Everest of cinema, where every step requires oxygen, patience, and stamina. And at the summit, James Cameron will be waiting, not with a flag, but with 3 more hours of bioluminescent plankton, volcanic devastation, ecological allegory, and religious schisms, daring us to keep up, daring us to absorb every metaphor, every spectacle, every ounce of world building. And the question is not whether audiences will watch, because of course they will. The question is whether they can withstand the weight of it all, because Cameron does not simply make films, he builds ecosystems, and Pandora is ready to swallow us whole.